Hello, and welcome to another edition of Storytelling on Orchard Street. I'm Pete Salamita, I'm your host. With me in the studio is Puma Perl. Puma is a poet, a writer, performer, and is the author of 2 chapbooks, Ruby True and Belinda and Her Friends, and 3 full-length poetry collections, Knuckle Tattoos, Retrograde on Great Weather for Media, and Birthdays Before and After on Beyond Baroque Books. Her band Puma Perl and Friends brings spoken word together with rock and roll and has performed together since 2012. Puma, welcome to the studio and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And I also would like to say hi to the lovely Faye, who you can't see on the camera.
She's being camera shy.
Yes. Which is a shame because I bet you she's very good on camera.
Very photogenic.
I'm sure. So I have to tell you this. One of the first things I wanted to say. So I found out about the podcast studio. The first reading I did was last year in I think July. Actually, I came here to see Phil Gamage, and then he introduced me to Wayne. Okay. I gave Wayne my book, and then he invited me to come back and do a feature. On the bill was Pauline Finley.
Yes, I know.
Right, and which meant that Philip Giambri and Linda Kleinbow was there. So that was a great introduction for me into the poetry network here in the city. They're really nice people, and they opened doors for me, invited me to do other things. But one of the first things that I remember Philip saying, I don't know if it was that night or the next night I saw him, was, "Oh, you got to check out Puma Perl."
Really?
Yes. You got to go see Puma. You know who Puma Perl is? You got to go see her.
You sound like him, yeah.
Yeah. So you have a big fan in Philip, and I've met you before, but I'm finally getting to sit down and talk to you.
Did you actually go see me after that?
I'm sorry. I haven't.
You didn't?
No.
But it was a good suggestion.
It was, yeah, but it was on my mind that, yes, this is somebody I need to go see. And it's kind of embarrassing.
Well,
but I have seen you at some readings.
We have.
Yeah.
But not my band.
Not yet. I really have to do that. I'm sorry. You know what? I don't go out as much as some of the people that I've met in this circle. And I've been going to a fair amount of readings, and like I'm going tomorrow night to do a reading. So I don't have a lot of bandwidth. I get up 5 a.m. too. So it has to be like the circumstances have to be perfect for me to go out. So it's not that I'm sure I'm going to love seeing you perform. And I need to do that.
Spot,
Yes, I do feel like I'm on the spot. But you should. So I like to get to know people, and I like my audience to get to know them. Of course, you're going to read some of your poetry. We're going to talk about your music and the poetry and all that. But I also like to know what makes my guests who they are and their, what informed their artistic expression. So I haven't had chat with you before, so I don't know much about your background. Are you a city gal?
I was brought up in Brooklyn.
Okay, cool. What section?
I was born in Crown Heights, but when I was about 6, my parents moved to Gravesend.
Okay.
So I would say that, that's where I was brought up.
Right,
in Crown Heights.
Sure.
Like, in Crown Heights, I was like across the street from the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens and Prospect Park.
Oh, my God.
Brooklyn Museum was down the
Yeah,
block.
of course. That's a great place to be.
Yeah, the best. And then here we go to Gravesend with, like, live chickens under the L, so.
I don't know if I've ever been to Gravesend, maybe by accident.
It's kind of like on the way to Coney Island. If you ever take the F trains to Coney Island.
Okay.
And if you look up and you see, like, rusting cars, and I guess all the chickens are dead by now. But that would be Gravesend.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're a city gal, but you grew up with the chickens.
I grew up with the chickens.
Any other animals?
I had a couple of dogs my parents gave away when I was in home, but other than that.
And of course, our little furry friends, the rats.
And we didn't know about rats back then.
No.
I don't think we had rats.
I think rats were more in the city, Manhattan.
Yeah,
they didn't move to Brooklyn until it got more hip.
well, it was like kind of a very connected kind of place, if you know what I mean.
Sure.
So I don't think they let the rats in.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah. Cement shoes for the rats.
Cement shoes for the rats.
So, did you study poetry?
Not then, no.
Right.
No, I mean, I suppose it all depends on your environment and where you grow up and the times and like what is in fashion. So if you're going to a kind of progressive school, you might possibly be learning a little about poetry, but kids grew up hating the idea of poetry because it was all about memorizing poems about like dead things, like in Flanders Field, the poppies grow, and Invictus, and you know,
and also form is important, and you know.
Well, we never really got to write anything.
Yeah, sure.
You know, yeah, so yeah, just like really like miserable, depressing subjects that you would have to memorize.
So when did the love of poetry hit you? Well, what came first, music or poetry?
Well, probably music came first, because music was just everywhere. Everybody loved music. When I was like in 5th grade, I was, you know, back then you could take subways anywhere. You know, we used to go downtown to like the Murray the K shows.
Wow.
And I saw like Little Richard and Chuck Berry.
Oh my God,
and we were kids. We were little kids. We were like 10 years old, you know.
Yeah, I have friends, good friends that grew up in Queens and Brooklyn, and they talk about all the shows that they got to see, you know, in small venues and
amazing.
Right.
I remember the Ronettes played like a Catholic school. Like
I know that stuff used to happen.
Yeah. And you just like take it for granted. Oh, this is what happens. Like this is what you do, you know. So with poetry, I think it was probably in junior high or maybe like 10th grade. It's actually in this poem that this wasn't one I was going to read, but I think when I do get to read, I will read it because it's called Escape from Gravesend.
Nice. Okay, you have to read that.
And it kind of tells you about finding poetry and finding different kinds of music, really by looking at the covers.
Okay, sure,
Like the beautiful blue of Stan Getz.
Right.
Coney Island of the Mind, Ferlinghetti, thinking it must be about, you know, like the Wonder Wheel, although it's not about Coney Island, but, you know, so when I started getting on the F train and getting off at West 4th Street and walking down 8th Street and 8th Street bookstore, and that was a whole other world. We didn't have bookstores.
Right.
You know, like, what are you going to waste your money on books?
Right. Right. Well, I grew up in the suburbs, Rockville Center, Long Island, so... there wasn't, I mean, I'm not going to say there was no culture, but you really had to look for it pretty hard. And once I was able to go into the city, it changed. And then I moved to Brooklyn. I moved to Brooklyn. I was in college, and God loved the excitement of the city, you know. And you just go for a walk in bookstores and record stores and clubs, and it was great, you know. And
especially then.
Yeah. I moved here in '79. So,
that was a great time to move.
Right. Yeah, the city was starting to come back a little bit. The 70s and 60s, late 60s were pretty rough on.
Well, it was rough, but there was also all this stuff going on with art and music.
It's weird. It's a double-edged sword because now most parts of the city are like Disneyland or something. It's like weird. It's like or sterile.
A mall.
So you know, I don't know about you, but I could spend a whole day in a bookstore or a record store, you know.
Definitely.
Yeah. I had no money, but somehow I had a collection of albums.
Somehow, I don't know how that happened, but we all.
You know, they still take up like a whole wall, and I'm like, I loved it back then, but what do I do if I have to move? You know.
I have a lot of trouble letting go of books.
Yeah. We have my wife and I have like at least 1 or 2 bookshelves in every room.
And I still want books.
Except the bathroom.
Yeah. I have a Kindle that I've never used.
Right.
I want to hold the book.
Yeah, me too. I'm not I mean, I read on my phone articles, but not books.
Articles.
Yeah. Right. So, we're talking about this. But what was like when you first started? Like, what were the early influences in music and specifically in writing and poetry, like or art that?
Well, I would have to kind of separate the music from the poetry for a minute because those early exposures, like pre.
You did poetry first, poetry readings, and then you added the music.
Professionally?
Well, I mean, when you started going out, you did poetry first.
I did poetry first,
right?
So I thought you meant like what I liked.
Yeah. Well, we all probably started music first, right? Most people, like when we were young, it was like the AM radio.
We played the AM, exactly,
right,
before they had concept radio.
Right, you know, Motown and the Beatles.
Yeah, and then the Beatles came, and Rolling Stones came.
Right,
and,
and then FM radio, and you could hear
FM,
whole albums.
Yeah. WBAI with Radio Unnameable.
Right.
It was a great time for radio.
Yeah.
FM radio, yeah.
Yeah, it's weird because I was just talking to the cashier out there. I said, I remember when we didn't have, what do you call it, recorders for voicemail or answering machines.
No, we didn't
And he was
have
like,
that.
what? It's like if you called somebody and they weren't home, they weren't
was
home.
it.
Or if somebody answered the phone, you had to hope they gave the message.
Yeah,
Right.
or then later you could pay like $1 more on your bill for call waiting. So
Right.
okay,
But
yeah,
the point is, there,
Yeah.
there was less, the less information or art. But it was more curated, I think, don't you? Like radio, you had radio and FM started coming out, but there was only a handful of TV channels, and if you wanted to see a movie, for the most part, you went to a theater, and so now you can get everything everywhere all the time.
Right, you
but
don't
it's
have to
so much
interact.
of
You
it.
don't have to interact with anyone.
Yeah, but I wonder what's better, because it's so easy. Like anybody could put music out, or a record, or anything, or any piece of art. But
I think about that all the time.
Yeah.
Like, that's such a glut.
it's such a glut.
Like,
And
yeah, like,
what do you watch?
How do you
and-
sort through? How do you find
I
out
know.
what's good?
Yeah.
You
So
know?
I don't know if it was always good, but back then I think the record industry had its bad side. But I think there were people in it that knew what they were doing too.
Well,
you know.
now it's so many things go on, and it's even hard, even with all the social media and internet and supposed communication, people never know what's going on.
Right. I know, it's weird.
And
right.
back then you opened the Village Voice,
Right.
and you knew everything.
Every
going on.
week I got the
Every
Village
single
Voice.
yeah,
And New York
and
Press.
you found out,
and-
okay,
yeah.
I'm going to go to this on
Right.
Tuesday, this on Wednesday.
Right.
And Monday night's jazz night. And they always have this at slot,
Right.
whatever,
Right.
And then of course all those rock clubs kicked in.
Right. Before we get too far, because we talked a lot already. How about you read something, and then we'll go back to more conversation.
Well, we were talking about Escape from Gravesend, so
Right.
I'm going to find that in my book here.
Okay.
Because I just took the book with me, like what the hell, and because I brought poems that I picked out, but this poem seems to really go along with what we're talking about, unless it's not in this. Oh yeah, it is. Okay. So this is Birthdays Before and After. That's the one from Beyond Baroque Books.
Is it available still?
It is still available.
And how can our listeners or viewers
Our
find
viewers can go to the dreaded corporate Amazon and Barnes & Noble, but
Right.
they can also go to Beyond Baroque
Okay.
Press, or they can go to, there's a nice little site, I think it's called bookshops.org, or
Okay.
bookshop, that all the profits go to independent
it? Oh, okay.
bookstores.
Cool.
And I like to
I
tell,
hadn't heard of that before.
Yeah, I like to tell people,
Yeah, so go there
suggest they do that.
and find it.
Yeah, okay. So this is called Escape from Gravesend. Bukowski, Duprima, Ferlinghetti, Coltrane. Unlike my real-life loves, you never let me down. In return, I've not been fickle nor unfaithful. Our relationships are perfect, free of expectations and demands. You don't give me money or remember my name, but you're forever present, dead or alive, always prepared to comfort, inspire, engage, or enrage, to demand a revolution of the soul. Even if I recall nothing else when they yanked the white sheet over my head, I'll be listening to O Love Supreme, reading a revolutionary letter, keeping Coney Island on my mind, Bukowski's bluebird soul fluttering because she gets so alone. No matter if friends bear witness or have stories to tell, I keep my first loves, that turquoise blue radio alongside my bed, suddenly giving a 12-year-old me the gift of Billy singing Willow Weep for Me, as I restlessly twist the dial. Emptiness fueling insomnia will grow into a beautiful void someday filled with jazz and poetry books purchased because of the Ferlinghetti cover or that Stan Getz blue. I miss those days of records and bookstores and solitary subway rides to West 4th Street. Adventure, illumination, joining 2 a.m. lost souls passing my room above the F train. Humming trains promising places to go when finally I get the fuck out of Gravesend with its good pizza, cages of McDonald Avenue chickens awaiting slaughter, a street smelling of blood, death, car wrecks, and maybe just a little bit of hope trickling down from those elevated tracks.
Man, I love that. And then that, I asked you your influences. You had a lot in there.
So yeah, I think you kind of answered some of your questions.
Yeah, I answered a lot of my questions.
And one of the questions that it kind of added an answer to was how I found jazz was fiddling around with that little radio and with Symphony Sid live at the Village Gate.
Wow. So you were listening to jazz like Coltrane and stuff like that when you were 12?
By accident.
Oh my God, that's intense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty young to be hip to that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever get to see him?
Coltrane was before my time.
Okay. Well, of course.
Yeah,
Wait,
he died he died? 65?
Oh, God, I'm so sorry. I thought it was later than that. No, I don't remember.
No, Coltrane was definitely before my, but I saw other greats like
I did see Elvin Jones.
I saw Elvin Jones many times. Yeah.
Incredible.
Yes,
that was a really incredible era of so much music and everything that,
Yeah.
But I'm blown away that you have references to those people at that age.
Like you don't even know what you're listening to.
Right.
It's like I saw the Velvet Underground by accident
when
I was in high school.
Uh-huh. Well, how did that happen?
So people said, "Well, I could go into the city. You want to come? Or go in here, or whatever." They were going to. It wasn't the Electric Circus they were at. It was the one downstairs, the Dome.
Right.
And I don't know where I am. I don't know where I'm going. And I go to this place, and it's like there's Lou with a whip, and there's Edie, and there's all this stuff going on. And
how old were you?
Well, I was in high school.
Oh, my
I was
God.
like 15, 16 years old.
Holy cow.
No,
was that eye-opener?
Yeah.
Right. I'm sure you had never seen anything like that before.
Nothing, and nothing was ever the same after that.
Right.
In my head. And they're still my favorite band.
Right.
Yeah. But I didn't know what I was seeing.
Right. Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah.
How do you get prepared for that at 15?
Right.
That's not something you would see on
16,
TV.
But it was just something like, it's just like someone says, well, a similar thing happened here. Like I was living on 10th Street between 1st and 2nd. And by this time, I was a little older than that. Like, I don't know, 20? I don't know what I was. But
so you were living in the city at 20?
Yeah. I was in the city.
What were you doing? Like, were you in school or just... No? Okay. Working? Or...
Sometimes working. I worked in bookstores sometimes. I was just here. It was very easy to be here because the rent was like $86.
Sure.
I shared it with my boyfriend. You didn't have to be doing any particular thing.
Right. Got it.
The super in my building said to me, "Give me a walk. Give me a walk over to 4th Street. I got to pick up money from someone."
Okay.
And where we wound up going was now I forgot the name of the place, and I know it so well. The New York Dolls used to play there. It was on 4th between 2nd and 3rd.
Okay.
It just slipped my mind, and I'm going to leave here, and I'm going to kick myself because everybody knows this place. But anyway, we walk in, and it's the New York Dolls. I'm like, who the fuck knows? You know what I mean? So you just never know what you could be walking into, basically.
Wow. What were the Dolls like?
They were like they were, you know? I mean, you know what the Dolls... It was like amazing. It was because I was not prepared for what I was about to see. And I saw them like on purpose at the Mercer Hotel before that fell down. And, I got to see that show there. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was something else. And you were still pretty young, so it was...
I was pretty young, but people started out in rock and roll a lot younger than that.
True.
People who saw their first bands were going to CBs and day shows and hardcore shows, 14, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I wish I missed some of that. I mean, like I said, I didn't come to the city till 79. Some of that was already, it was still pretty happening.
There was a lot of
it was still a lot happening. Yeah.
It was like about to become like post-punk, maybe in the early 80s, but it was still happening.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you have any career, at some point that took your time, or like, what did you do before?
Well, I was on this special plan with college where I took 20-year breaks between each step.
Okay.
I went to college for like about a year after high school, and then I dropped out, and then I lived upstate, and then I was in California, and then I was back here, and then at some point I decided to go back, and I got an associate's degree from the Borough of Manhattan College.
Okay, right.
And then another 20 years passed. and I got a bachelor's from
Nice.
Empire State.
Well, you had perseverance. You didn't give up.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then I got a master's
Wow.
in social work.
Holy cow.
Yeah,
Right.
so, but there were
So,
all these gaps.
Sure. So are you still a social? I mean, you became a social worker?
I was a social.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you're always a social worker.
Well,
But
true.
I don't work as a social worker
Right.
anymore. I don't renew my license anymore. But I worked in harm reduction.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Right.
and I was telling a friend of mine as I was
What
continuing.
what are any names of organizations that I might know that you work for? Or?
Well, the last place I worked was actually a harm reduction program in Beckersville Hospital before it merged with Mount Sinai.
Okay.
But I worked for other smaller community
Right.
organizations.
Right.
Before that, I worked in the first scattered site housing program that ever started at the same time as Housing Works,
Mhm.
this other one, which was for people living with HIV and AIDS.
Right.
Before that, I did outreach, so I did all of these things for all of these years. And at some point, I was directing a program, and people were asking me for references so they could go to graduate school.
Mhm.
And I was like, well, why don't I go to graduate school?
Okay. Sure. Yeah. All right. Yeah. All right.
So I went to graduate school,
Right.
and the outcome of that was I don't want to do this anymore.
Oh. Okay. Right. Yeah. Right. All right.
Yeah.
You must have seen a lot, though. That's pretty intense work, isn't it?
Yeah, but it was life work. There was
Sure.
the boundaries between my life and my work. Yeah.
Yeah, but when you do something like that, you feel good about what you're doing, no?
Not particularly.
Oh, no?
No, I mean,
You didn't feel like you were making a
could
difference
feel
in
good
people's
about-
lives?
I felt really good about providing housing because
Okay.
that's concrete.
Right,
Okay.
right. Well, the harm reduction is probably never ending, right? Is that why?
Well, there weren't all harm reduction programs.
Yeah.
But harm reduction, you save a lot of lives.
Right,
You
sure.
definitely help people save their own lives.
Right.
But what stops feeling good is the
Bureaucracy, I was just
and
gonna
the
get right to that.
administration. It was,
Sure.
it was never the clients that
No,
burned me out.
no, that's...
The paperwork, and
right.
they were constantly coming up with like new techniques
Right,
to use.
sure, I get
and,
it. Right.
And whatever the name for it
Right,
was.
I
that,
understand, yeah.
Yeah, and I just hated it, and by the end,
Right.
I really hated it.
That's what gets in the way of that. Yeah, I know people that will say the same thing. I have a friend that works in
Yeah.
mental health.
Yeah.
Help finding housing for people with mental
Right.
health issues.
Housing is very difficult.
And he left
yeah.
for a while because he couldn't take that part of it, and then he went back to it. I worked for a while for Life Beat music industry, Fights AIDS, and we fund.
For Lifebeat?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, I'm
and,
familiar with it.
yeah, and we funded harm reduction programs
Yeah.
and HIV outreach. Yeah. Let's talk about some of the things you've accomplished because that's a good thing to talk about.
Okay.
So you've received 4 awards from the New York Press Association in recognition of your journalism, and you were the recipient of the 2016 ACRA Award in the category of writing. So tell me about the ACRA Award. I'm not familiar with it.
Oh, you're not familiar
No.
with the ACRA Awards?
Oh, it's-
You must be familiar with Clayton Patterson. I mean, everyone knows
So,
Clayton Patterson.
I'm new to this poetry world.
Clayton's not in the poem.
Oh, okay. So
Clayton's like an iconic Lower East Side figure, photographer,
Oh, okay.
archivist.
All right.
Has a place on Essex Street.
Mhm.
He has everything archived.
Okay.
He's been taking photographs of like the same families from when the kids were
Wow.
like knee high
Uh-huh.
to now. He has scrapbooks of every empty bag of dope that ever existed on Avenue D. Not that he was
Wow.
a drug,
Sure.
Yeah, he's a filmmaker. I just saw him. I
Okay.
just saw him over at
All
the
right.
Beastie Boys things.
Wow.
He's got a finger on every part of what goes on down here.
Okay.
Right. And the ACRA Awards was originally named in honor of the writer Kathy Acker.
Right. I have
And-
heard of her.
Yes,
Yeah. Mhm.
and it was existed both in San Francisco. Somebody else coordinated it there and here, and it was the Kathy Acker Awards. But somebody started some bullshit about Kathy was against awards, and the family doesn't want you to call it Kathy Acker.
Wow.
So
Okay.
bullshit. Became the Acker Awards, and Clayton started this. God, I'm not sure what year, but it was to recognize avant-garde work
Okay.
and people who are maybe not generally recognized in the mainstream, although some might be, but
Right.
he really tries to stay out of the mainstream, out of the people who are like getting published by like Random House or signed. They've hit
Sure.
by not that anyone's getting signed, but
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
So he recognizes.
That's
so
great.
it's the community recognizing one another.
So what
Yeah.
what works of yours were?
He doesn't specify.
Oh,
works.
okay. It's just work. Your work in
You
general.
know what?
Your
It's
body, your
more
work.
the individual. Because
Right,
one year
see.
I helped him on it because it was during the pandemic and he wanted it to happen, but it was so hard for him to work alone on it.
Mm-hmm.
So I worked with him, and it was more like identifying people who make a difference and saying, okay, what is it about them
Right.
that we're recognizing? Because they may be a painter and an educator and this, and you know, so
Right.
you're looking at different categories.
Sure.
So
Oh, it must have been a big deal for you.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's great.
Yeah.
And he does it. He does it every. He pulls it off every year,
Cool.
one way or another. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
How about you read another piece?
Okay. I'll just also say that I was honored and pleased to be recognized as a writer rather than specifically as a poet,
Oh, okay.
because
Right.
I don't write just poetry.
Right. Sure.
So,
Uh-huh.
I like that
That's great.
it happened that way.
Yeah.
Well, maybe since Faye is here and behaving so well
really
that
is.
nobody even knows
Yeah.
she's here,
Right.
we'll read a poem about dogs.
All right. I like the sound of that.
Okay. Okay, this is called Apologies to the Dog.
Nice.
Last night, I apologized to the dog. You're stuck with me, I said. I'm sorry, Faye. But she loves you, people respond when I tell them that I apologize to the dog. Of course she loves me. What choice does she have? I'm her everything. I'm sorry I'm your everything, Faye. Poor Faye. Maybe she still dreams of Mexico and the yard and patio in her rescue home, of life before harnesses, leashes, and elevators, and of her savior, Eula, who called her gordita and threw her pork slices and never told her to lose 5 pounds as my vet did the day we stood her on a scale like a reality star on my 600-pound life. We play ball on concrete in the shadow of cranes and trucks. We've watched city workers kill the cherry trees, the shade, and the oxygen. On hot afternoons, she lies down beneath benches and scaffolding. She is patient about learning stupid tricks and lifts her paw high in the air for a treat, catches balls in her mouth like a circus dog. When left alone, she scratches at the door exactly 3 times, then sighs and goes to sleep in her little Snoopy bed. I am sorry I don't have grandchildren to play with you in a backyard where they could run. I'm sorry for my mood and my age and my limited income, and for the rats in the street and the squirrels in the remaining trees who call to you but remain as elusive as the sky, and for the strangers who try to pet you when you just want a little bit of space. I'm sorry that everyone thinks you're so lucky to be saved by Americans. You wag your tail furiously when you hear Eula's voice on the phone, and if you could talk, you might explain that actually you were quite content in Mexico, just like Giovanni's Nicky Rosa, in ways most people don't understand. I am sorry, Faye, but you are stuck with me and whatever is left of this place we call America.
I love that.
Thank you.
So, how old was she when you got her?
We're assuming that when she was found in Tijuana, terribly sick and beat up and
Right.
skinny and open wounds,
Right.
that she was 3.
Okay.
And they really
Right.
rehabilitated her for
Okay.
a year.
Right.
So when I got her, she was 4.
Right.
And
Yeah, they
now
don't
she's
always know
probably-
exactly. Yeah.
Also because you go by teeth, and she was
Right.
already missing a bunch of
Sure.
them.
Right. So it makes it harder. Yeah.
Yeah. So she's probably 5.5 now.
Nice. So
Yeah,
you-
had like a year and a half.
cool.
Yeah.
And she's very important in your life.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, she is.
Have you always been a dog person?
Yeah, but I didn't always have dogs because
Right.
I didn't really have the time for them.
Sure.
Before I had her, my daughter and I shared a dog.
Okay.
And it was really my daughter's dog, but I took care of her a lot.
Right.
I considered her mine too.
Mm-hmm.
And her name was Diva. And I asked Diva, whatever you do, just don't die in 2020, because she was getting old. And
Right.
2020 was bad enough.
No, I know that would have been
Yeah,
terrible.
yeah. So she waited. She waited till
Okay.
February 2021.
All right.
And then I got her in February 2022.
Right. Nice. Okay. We're glad you're here, Faye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's sitting on my foot now. She's so well behaved.
I love that story, though. It really is a beautiful picture of Faye and city life
Yeah.
and everything put together.
Oh, she was like, what the fuck, man?
It
when
must
she
have
got
been.
here.
Yeah, that's a big change.
She had never been on a leash.
Right.
Yeah, she
Yeah.
had never been in an elevator.
Right. It must have been pretty scary.
Yeah, she was not happy.
New York's a scary place for everybody.
Oh, she was snarling and biting.
Yeah.
And,
Right. Did you have to do, like, how did you get her acclimated? Just happens.
patience.
Just time and patience. Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me about. I think if I'm reading this correctly, you were already doing poetry, and then you started Puma and Friends, or
Yeah.
is that your first time with music, or you had done it here and there
Well,
before?
I had done it, here and there if the
Right.
opportunity was there, but
Right.
I didn't have a band or
Sure.
the same person I played with all the time.
Mhm.
But I get kind of like bored with doing the same thing over and over and
Yeah,
over.
of course,
So
sure.
so it's like reading poetry. Then it kind of morphed into like doing more performance art,
Right.
and then like sometimes there'd be music in it, and
Right.
I hosted shows. I had one at the Barry Poetry Club. I had one
Okay.
at the Yippie Museum.
Right.
Cafe was still there with this guy Big Mike. We used to
Yeah, no,
co-host
Big Mike.
these shows.
Sure. Yeah.
We used to. Oh yeah, of course you do.
Yeah.
So we used to co-host these shows.
Right.
And then it was just happened extremely organically that
Mm-hmm.
I would also go see bands, and I would think it would be kind of cool to like
Add music.
do a
to it.
poem between. No, not to add music,
Oh.
but for me to be asked to do a poem like
Oh,
between the bands.
I see. Right. Right.
Open
right.
up for the bands.
Sure. And did that happen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I thought about it and it
Right.
happened.
Wow,
You know?
nice, yeah.
It was like that. So
Yeah.
then I'd be doing it, and then all of a sudden, like someone would step forth and start playing.
Oh, sure.
So
So it happened organically. It wasn't like you didn't sit down and say, "I'm going to do this." It just
No, I
Yeah.
didn't. And
That's the
then-
best way.
Yeah. And then one night I was at Barry Electric. It was right after Hurricane Sandy,
oh,
and there was a benefit for musicians.
Uh-huh.
And Joff Wilson, he had a band
Sounds
called the
familiar.
Baroque Boys. He has a band
Okay.
called Soul Cake now.
oh, all right, yeah,
Yeah, he's a
Right.
figure at the Sixth Street Garden.
Sure.
Yeah,
Okay,
he's
right,
on the board.
right,
and
right.
He runs music under the
Okay,
security.
cool. That's a
So-
nice place.
Yeah, so he
Yeah.
was kind of doing like a jam. One of his, what does he call it, add water and stir kind of bands, because he's just great at just bringing people on stage if like there's a gap.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, and he doesn't remember that this happened. I always remind he does not remember how this started, but he asked me, why don't you come up and do some poetry with the band?
All right.
And he was playing this guy, Thomas Gauss, a French guy who's played with the Bowery Boys. He's in France right now, but he'll be back. He was playing bass. Someone was on drums. I think Val Kinsel was playing keyboards. Just a few people.
Mm-hmm.
So I did a couple of poems with them, and I remember Joff and we looked at each other after. He said, I think we might have something here.
All right. Yeah.
And that was in 2012.
Wow. Okay.
And it
So
continued
11
very
years, wow.
organically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of the same people still working with you?
Well, just Joff of that group of people.
Okay,
But if
right.
some of the... So the next time I had a reading, I asked Joff, would you like to come and accompany me and
Right.
continue what we're doing? And he said, do you mind if I ask Walter to come? And he meant Walter Stedding,
Mm-hmm.
violinist. And I was like, do I mind? I mean,
Right.
you know,
Sure.
Walter
Right.
Stedding's going to play with me? Like, wow.
yeah.
So Walter came.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I was already doing some stuff with Danny Ray because I had the saxophonist, because I
Nice.
had gone to some shows that in bands he was playing with, and he was someone who stepped forward and played with me.
Right.
So it was much more acoustic. It was me and Joff and Walter and Danny.
Right.
And since then, it just went through so many different configurations
Right.
and different people. And Joff and I still play together when we do like a 4-piece rock band. Then I also have played just a 3-piece of myself, Joe Stabnick from New York Junk, and Dave Donan, the drummer, but he'll play like a cajon.
Mhm.
He plays drums with us.
Right.
So, and Joe and I do a lot of things separately, and I
Right.
sometimes do stuff with Joff's band Soul Cake. So there's a lot.
Oh.
Yeah.
So you're pretty busy.
When we can be.
Yeah.
you
When's
know.
your when's the group's next performance? Is there one lined up?
Yeah, we have several lined up. We actually have Joff will be doing what might be the last music under the stars of the season, unless the weather in October is good.
Right.
On September 15th.
Okay.
So that's at the 6B Garden.
Today's the 9th, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
it'll be next Friday.
All right. Well, I hope
Yeah.
this airs before then. I'll try to put it up before then. But yeah.
Yeah. So but we have Puma Perl and Friends on that. Now, I'm not sure what Puma Perl and Friends is probably going to mean whoever's around, because
Okay.
that's how the garden works. But
Right.
Joff will definitely be there, and Joe will be there.
Okay.
And,
So
Dave's gonna
Puma
be
and Pearl and Friends are playing on the 15th
Yes.
at the Garden.
And then Puma Perl and Friends, the regular Friends, which is Joff, Joe, and Dave, and
Uh-huh.
I
Okay.
will be playing on the 29th at the Parkside for Ann Hussick's birthday
Oh,
bash.
cool. All right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so those are two things
Sure.
coming up.
All right, nice.
Yeah, then October 24th, we'll be back at the 11th Street Bar.
All right. Yeah.
That we play kind of regularly.
It's nice to have these things to look forward to, no?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I've been working towards a similar thing. Maybe different style, but I started doing poetry with the music last year. Kind of by accident in a way. I decided to put my poem into a contest, and they said you could put music with it. So I asked my friend, hey, you want to come up with some music for this poem? And we did a couple, actually. And it's weird because we've known each other since '79. He was my best man at my wedding, but he was a drummer and I was a drummer. So very rarely we worked together. You know,
Right.
There was one period where we kind of had like a percussion group and we did a few things, but it didn't last that long. So it's a great way to spend time with a really good friend, you know, and it's seamless because I write, it's very specific. I do the poems and he does the music. And
Was this the guy that you played with at George Wallace?
oh yeah, Fred,
Yeah, so I
Fred
could see-
Argenziano, yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So and we have another guitarist that when he can come, and I'd like to make it a larger band and do more shows.
Yeah, well, when we started, it was total improvisation.
Right.
And then later on, Joe started writing specific music for my poems. So we have an album that
Right.
we just finished.
Oh, cool.
Well, we finished the tracks. We
Right.
didn't finish-
It's not
yeah.
out yet.
No, it's
No, it's-
like
yeah.
the album cover and all stuff
Okay.
like that. but-
When's it going to be released? Do you know?
Well, when we finish.
Right. Yeah. There's no rush.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah. A few months or something, or maybe. Or,
hopefully
Yeah.
not more than
Right,
that.
yeah,
You know,
right,
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Cool. Time is ticking by quickly.
Exactly,
And I'm
yeah.
enjoying talking to you, but I definitely want you to read another one before we go.
Okay. Well, I read one for Faye, and I mentioned Diva, so I will read one for Diva.
Cool.
I actually read two for Diva, so let me see which one okay. I'll read the more lighthearted one. This is called...
What kind of dog was Diva?
Diva was a bigger dog than Faye.
Right.
She was like part hound, part pit.
Huh.
Probably, definitely some pit in her.
Right.
Medium-sized dog. Very, very different persona.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got her when she was 3.
Oh.
Her family had
Right.
allegedly moved to a place they couldn't have dogs and just stuck her in a kill shelter,
Oh.
and she was just
Right.
traumatized.
That's terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. So. This is called A Taste for Cocktails. Do you ever wonder what dogs think, he asked, sprawls across my bed, naked except for his boxes and his bleach-stained red socks. I attributed his curiosity to the joint he'd smoked rather than a genuine interest in dogs, so I ignored him, looking instead at Diva, sitting politely just over the threshold, gazing at us somewhat balefully. It was easy to tell what she was thinking. Get the fuck off my bed, you clown. You're in my spot. Or maybe those were my thoughts. As I regarded how white her little eyebrows were getting, I wondered about her sexual history. She'd always declined to discuss her past encounters. Was she promiscuous, monogamous, betrothed to a handsome pit who vanished as rogues often do? She'd never had children and became extremely irate when other dogs sniffed her butt. Did she miss regular, passionate sex? Did I? My love life was infrequent, fast, and furtive, proof only of consistency in my taste. Unavailable men with big egos and slight touches of Asperger's. Or maybe I just like musicians. Once in an outdoor bar, she wagged her tail so far she knocked over a fruity vodka drink, furiously lapping it up from the ground. When I pulled her away, she ate a cocktail napkin. Could this mean she was really a party girl? Or maybe, like me, she just had a taste for vodka cocktails.
Great. I love the way you make Diva and Faye sound like a person. You know? It's not, you know,
Yeah,
like you
well-
really can tell you how much you love them, and also you bring humanity to them. But also, I love how you weave them into your story of your life too.
Yeah.
Right.
They're
It's
so,
not ins-
they're so quirky. You
Yeah,
know?
and it's not inseparable.
Yeah.
The two
yeah,
things. Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me about in 2021 you curated 4 shows as part of the Howl Happening
Oh, that
Artist
was
in Residence
great.
program.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I love Howl,
Mhm.
you know, and the people associated with it. And
What
the
would our
legacy.
audience, if they don't know what Howl is, what?
Oh, well, Howl Happening is a gallery that was part of the legacy of Arturo Vega.
Okay.
And before it was that gallery, there used to be Howl Happening around the park. Like every year, there was a big Howl festival based on,
Right.
of course, the Allen Ginsberg poem.
Mhm.
And I can't really tell you what went terribly wrong with people not putting the paperwork in to do these festivals
Right.
or infighting. I wasn't on the inside of that. But eventually, this wonderful gallery opened on First Street. And they also have a second spot now on the Bowery. And part of Arturo's legacy is to preserve work by artists, to have a place to
Right.
preserve. And there's actually a very interesting opening tonight at Howell for an artist named Floyd
Mhm.
at 6 p.m.,
Okay.
which I had fantasies of going to, but it might be one thing too much to
Right.
handle.
Sure.
But so during the pandemic, they also do Howell TV where
Mhm.
they stream. And during the pandemic, of course, they couldn't have much of an audience. So every month, they were selecting somebody to be the curator and do 4 shows,
Oh, right.
and that would be shown, you know, on weekly. Although you could keep streaming it.
Okay.
And
Right.
So you know, so they invited me, which I was extremely honored to
Sure.
do, and
Right.
I did like 4 different kind of shows. Like
Mhm.
I did poetry. One was straight up poetry.
Right.
One was just myself, Joe, and Dave. 2 were with Joe and
Mhm.
Dave, and one of them we had saxophone. We had Raven, who you may know, aka Chucky Seton Hancock.
Uh-huh.
He came and played with us, and I think I had the poets come back. That was Jane Ormerod, who was one of my publishers from
Right.
Retrograde, and Nika Ray,
Yeah, I know
my
that.
friend. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
so I kind of so you know my vision was building it up from just the poetry to like the last one being like this
Right.
more of a
Sure.
rock and roll show.
Did you enjoy that process?
Oh yeah, it was
Yeah.
great. Yeah.
Any hopes to do that again?
I
Something
don't,
like
I
that.
don't know if that
Right.
opportunity would
Sure.
come again.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Sure.
Or
Yeah, we had a
somewhere
great-
else, or you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. What's like in your immediate future? Because it seems like you do a lot of things, but you have any other plans? You said you like to change up. You don't like to be bored. Not to say you're bored now, but I'm saying, like, do you have any other things coming up, ideas that might be different, or?
Well, we of course we want to give some attention to getting this record out, which
Right.
is different because
Well, then that's a big deal. Right, sure.
Yeah.
So that's going to take a lot of
Yeah.
your time. Yeah.
Now I have my friends in L.A. Who began Punk Hostage Press like
Okay.
ages ago, and
Right.
I'm such good friends with them, Iris Berry and Razor, and for whatever I've edited books for them, but I've never published with them. Although there's always
Okay.
been an open invitation.
Are you a good editor? 'Cause that's
Well,
different
the
than
people
writing.
I edited thought so.
Right.
so,
It's
you
a
know.
different skill than writing.
Yeah. It's all about the relationship, really.
Okay.
You know, so I've been supposed to be giving them a manuscript for a long time.
I see. Uh-huh.
Yeah, because
Right.
it's like whenever you're ready, whenever you want. To me, the worst thing to say to me is whenever you're ready.
Right.
Because
Yeah. Oh,
so
you want a deadline, I guess.
yeah, I work
Yeah.
better with the deadlines.
Right.
But so I should really be working on that, and I guess part of it is I haven't really grabbed onto a theme.
Hmm.
Like all of my books have had themes
Right.
that either presented themselves before I did it or as I was doing it.
Okay. Right.
And this one I'm a little vague about. So,
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
We still have time. We could both read one. I usually like to read one during the show.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll read one. You'll read another one, and,
Okay.
and then we'll close out with any final thoughts. So this one's called New York City, My Home. I know I was there. The long passage of time makes it feel as though I wasn't. New York City in all its grimy, dirty, stinking self stepping over empty crack vials and used condoms as rats scurry by, looking in alleyways and abandoned storefronts for a potential threat to your life. We were young and just shrugged it off as part of the zeitgeist. The city holding promises of art, music, and social experiences helped us look past the blight. Now the city seems sterile, a mostly unaffordable rich man's paradise. My fellow travelers of a time when equality seemed attainable write verses filled with images like graffiti on a subway car, or drinking in dive bars until 4, when a cave-like graphic on a black subway wall could make you a pop star in a pop shop filled with your art. I'm not a young man anymore. I don't find adventure in the thrill of the unknown. I like my meal home-cooked and plentiful. But I still dig the gritty chords of a song birthed in scorn or the splatter of paint made in a frenetic arch of design. I cherish the memories of late-night knishes and egg creams at Dave's before heading home from a night filled with youthful aplomb, when the waves of energy seemed endlessly. It was our time to grow up and be someone, hoping somehow we'd do more than survive.
Very nice.
Thanks. I wonder if I read that before.
And
I try not to read, obviously, I don't.
yeah, sometimes I write down like everything I do.
I really should. I've been thinking about doing
Yeah,
that because
yeah.
I try really hard, especially if I'm talking to, if I'm reading in some same place
Yeah.
and maybe with some of the same people, I try really hard not to. I just finished reading. I'm like, did I read this? I think I read it before because I remember somebody commenting on the egg creams.
Well,
from
yeah,
Dave's.
well, that's funny because I was going to comment on the egg cream that it could have been my childhood best friend's father making it for you because he used to work
Right.
at Dave's.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Get out of here.
Yes.
Wow.
And he was a
And what-
refugee from Poland.
Wow.
You know, who had been in the Holocaust.
When would he have been working there? Like at the
those
latest?
years, he was still
Right.
there. Those years.
So
Like,
yeah, I got an egg cream from your friend's father.
You might have.
Well,
Depending-
you would think so at some
yeah,
point.
Yeah, because I was telling Dave Donan, who joins, and he actually remembered him. He said, yes,
Wow.
this Polish guy, he had a nice smile.
Right.
Yeah, with an accent, very quiet.
Oh,
He remembered
wow.
talking to him.
Yeah. I don't know. That was such a
Yeah.
great place.
Yeah, yeah.
It was such a great place. Like, when you're young, you don't have a lot of money, and you're out late, and there's not that many places open.
Well,
you know?
he worked there, and his wife, my friend's mother, and I'm still friends with her from second grade, this person, and she worked at S. Klein on Union Square.
Oh,
So she would
Wow.
take us to the Automat.
oh, the automat.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or he would take us to, so we had like the best life.
Right. Did you see that documentary about the automat?
Yes, I did.
It's
That was
fantastic,
good.
isn't it?
That was
You know
really
what?
good.
Somebody said, it's really good. I'm like, really? It's just about the automat. And I had
It's
no
great,
idea.
yeah.
Because I got the tail end of that, really. By the 60s, it was sort of on its way out for the most part. It survived into the 80s, I think.
Yeah, because I remember
Right.
my aunt
Right.
Ruth used to
But the
take me,
glory days
yeah.
were the 40s and 50s, I think.
Well, I guess, but
Yeah.
to me it was glorious when we went.
The documentary is crazy how much food
Yeah.
they made.
Yeah, and it was in Philadelphia too, which
Yeah.
I did not know.
Yeah. So we don't want to spend the rest of the time talking about,
About
the
the
automat.
automat and egg creams and, yeah.
But we do want to hear one more for you.
Okay. This is called Surviving and Making Breakfast. Somewhere you're listening to Monk, laughing at us as we chase your poems and make big plans to publish them, promises unfulfilled in your lifetime. Not that you ever really cared. How silly we are to believe we have the power to bring your words back to life while bemoaning our own. To think you are somewhere watching when you never even believed in somewhere. You chose isolation and rarely complained. Writing from a hospital bed, you said, I do envy all those people, though, who get up in the morning and don't have to think about anything but surviving and making breakfast. I wake with my head filled with dog walks, car inspections, waffles and bananas, faded sunrises behind purple curtains, prayers to percolators and computers, and the possibility of grace on an ink-stained piece of paper.
Cool. So how do you, when you write, do you like for me, sometimes it's just like a sentence or something that pops in my head and somehow it just comes out. But do you plan your poems or your stories, or it just kind of happens?
No, I don't plan anything.
Right.
Yeah. If I'm lucky, it happens. I seem to like start a bunch of things.
Right.
then go back to them.
Okay.
I do that a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm not as prolific as I used to be, to tell you the truth.
Oh, well, okay. Why is that?
I don't know. Maybe I've just like said so many things
Right.
that if I don't make a complete change, I get a whole new inspiration.
Right.
You know, because I'm not going to go repeat
Yeah, I get
myself.
that. Sure.
And, you know,
Right.
I've written about this and
Right.
this and this.
Yeah,
you know.
I try to be very cognizant of that. Trying not to repeat repeat things. There are repeats, but try not to.
But sometimes you can get a line from something you wrote a long time ago that means something totally different.
True.
Now.
Right.
So
Right.
I write a lot of poems to dogs.
Well, they're in your life. You know? I take a lot of pictures of my cats.
And then I wrote pictures, and then I wrote a ton of poems about like the destruction of the East River Park. So
I've seen that.
Yeah, so I wrote a lot about that and a lot of photos about that. So part of, and every April, there's a bunch of us. It's not actually, it's a very small group who get together and do the 30-30 for National Poetry Month,
Okay.
poem a day for April 4th. And I always do it. And I'm like obsessive about
So every day you have to write a
day.
poem.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Does that challenge help you, or is
It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
You
right.
actually, at the end of the month, you might get a couple of things you like. You're
Right.
not going to like everything.
No.
But,
Do you plan ahead? Like what's coming, and you start thinking of subjects or ideas, or you just want it to happen?
No, it just happens,
Yeah.
know, like sometimes I cheat a little bit and I write a couple of poems a few days before. And sometimes, like I know last year, I think it was January, I was asked to read somewhere. And I'm like, I was tired of all my shit. I'm going to like write new stuff. And I wrote a bunch of poems,
Right,
you know.
sure.
Like somehow I was able to get myself to write a bunch of poems.
Right.
So the muse comes and goes.
So you mentioned a couple of performances with your group. Are you doing any poetry features coming up, or?
I just did like 6 of them.
Right.
I just did like a whole bunch. So
Right.
I don't really think I have any solo poetry features coming up.
All right.
Yeah.
Right. So we're pretty much at the end of the show. Any closing thoughts you have, or anything else you want the audience to know about Puma Perl? Or
Well,
I was curious, what else besides the music and poetry and Faye is important in your life? Like, are you really into food? I know it sounds stupid, but
Not
like
especially.
like other things besides music and poetry and art. Like what else is and Faye, of course.
okay, so let's see. What else exists besides music and poetry?
I know, it's not
don't
much.
know.
Yeah, well, for me, it's food because I was a chef for a bit.
Yeah, food to me is like survival.
Right,
You know?
right.
I mean, there's certain things I like to go out and see. I mean, this is going back to poetry and art, but like
Right.
last night I went to see John Cooper Clarke
Okay.
at LPR,
Right.
which I loved.
Okay.
So that's along the same lines.
Right.
But preserving relationships with people
Sure.
at this point in life.
Right.
My grown kids.
So you have more than one. You mentioned your daughter earlier.
I have a son as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are they nearby? I mean,
My son is right over the Manhattan Bridge. My daughter is actually only a couple of blocks from me.
Oh, cool.
That's how we were
Right,
able to ship
right.
the dogs. So,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
so-
what do they do?
Besides doing like a lot of Muay Thai, my son has a business. I hate to even say that the title is an expediter because that was what that horrible Giglio serial murderer did. It was actually in the same business, but like kind of kind of making things happen for people who are building or designing raw space.
Okay.
Getting licenses, that kind of thing.
Right.
And my daughter works at the New School in a program that under the auspices of Parsons, which is for kids of color who want to be artists.
Is she an artist herself?
I don't know if she would say she's an artist, but she really is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And does your son do any artistic venture?
My son probably is capable of doing a lot more. He's tried a lot of different. He was a DJ when he was like a kid for years.
Right.
You know,
right.
and when he was like 14, he was throwing raves.
Wow, that's cool. Cool kid.
Yeah,
he must have been pretty popular.
Yeah, and then when 9/11 happened, that shut down all the travel.
Sure.
They were actually supposed to DJ a New Year's Eve party in Colombia that year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh.
And then he's tried some stand up. He's tried, but he has an artistic soul,
Right.
and he has a great appreciation of art.
Sure.
He has an encyclopedic knowledge of music beyond mine.
I don't have any. I've listened to so much music, but nowadays especially, I find myself like, music I know. I was like, wait, who is that again? It's really bad.
He knows every genre. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Like, I think sometimes I should get my brain checked.
Yeah, well, I think we all do this. Like, I still haven't remembered the club on 4th Street.
It's going to hit you on the way home or
Oh, well,
something.
yeah, in the middle of the night.
Okay. Well, I'm going to hit the theme song, and I'm going to say that it was terrific having you here.
Thank you. And that Faye was such a good girl.
Faye was fantastic. She
they
deserves a
actually
nice
doubted
treat.
her behavior in here, you know.
I know. Shame on them.
Really?
So you've been listening to Storytelling on Orchard Street. I forgot to say in the intro that it's in the P&T Knitwear bookstore, 180 Orchard Street. It's a fantastic bookstore. They have a cafe, and they have great events, like my friend Wayne Kroll's First Floor Walk-Up, which I'll be doing October 9th. So, again, Faye, it was fantastic to get to talk to you. And I appreciate
Again, Faye? You just called me
Faye, I'm so sorry. Puma, that's embarrassing.
That's
Well,
so
I wasn't.
funny.
I guess I didn't really talk to Faye. I'm sorry we didn't talk to you, Faye.
Yeah.
But Faye's important. Thank you so much. That's a great way to end the show. I'm not going to say any more after that. Goodbye.
Bye.